as you probably gathered, this is just a folly. It was built by the man who owned a big house in the top left-hand corner picture there, a fellow called William Hutt. Has no practical purpose whatsoever other than to impress his rich friends when they come down from London for the weekend to see him, with the very minor practical use that he was a very keen yachtsman. So he liked to go and sit up on the top with his telescope and his bottle of port and watch the yachts go by, and allegedly get away from his wife because she couldn't manage the stairs. But that may just be malicious gossip. He built the big house bought the big house in 1872. It was already a pretty impressive structure, but he added himself a couple of bits to it. The Big Ben look-alike on the right-hand end, the Gothic pile on top of the roof. So he spent a great deal more money on it, and then amazingly enough, he still had enough left over in 1875 to build this place, which was in effect the centrepiece of his front garden, because his front garden stretched to the structure with the white upper storey there to about the same distance that way and right to the top of the hill. The house itself sadly was very badly damaged by fire, well, on two occasions, once in 1904 and then even more so in the 1950s when it was deemed to be so badly damaged it wasn't worth repairing, so it was demolished, and we now have a very bland housing estate in its place, which is a bit sad. William Hutt himself was an interesting character. He did have local connections. I think he went to school in what is now the convent building along the way there. Then he went off, made a lot of money as an empire builder, given this was the 1840s. And then when he retired, he went into politics. He was MP for Gateshead for a while, made a lot of money in that. Moved back down to the Isle of Wight in 1872, bought that property and did it up. And he died in 1881. The story was that although he was very affluent, he was a little bit of, he had social aspirations, and he was hoping that perhaps Victoria might come down and see him for tea one afternoon if he did the place up nice and made it grand enough, but she never did. Although King George V did come down, but that was much later. It's never been used for anything practical, so you are in effect standing in a rich man's vanity project. Very welcome to go to the top of the stairs if you wish, having paid your £2 donation, but do be very careful because the last flight of steps up to the top of the tower are very steep and narrow and we don't want anybody to hurt themselves. Any questions?
Downstairs, the room downstairs, what's the history of that with all the fossils and things on the wall?
That was used as effectively a curio shop in the 1990s, I think, by a fellow called Jungle Love had the lease of it, and he sold all sorts of stuff, shells, curios, crystals, probably buy stuff in brown paper envelopes that he had under the desk as well. And he did that for quite some time. He died, his brother took on the lease but ran it a little while, and then nothing much happened after that. So along with the rest of the tower, it was closed up from about 2000 really until most of the last 20 or so years, until last year, 2024, when it was completely renovated at great public expense, and has been open ever since August of 2024.
What would the original staircase, would it have been a metal?
No, the original one was wooden. In fact, I think there are at least two original wooden ones before, and I have a funny feeling, although I don't know this for sure, that the original means of ascent might have been a rope ladder, simply because there was, or in fact there still is up there now, a huge metal bar stuck in the wall, like just like a huge iron bar, from which you might reasonably have hung a rope ladder. And there is also, as you can see above you, this bulge in the concrete here, which I suspect is where it supported the rope ladder, but I'm guessing a bit there. See very clearly from the top that if you go up there, the forts in the Solent, of which there are 4. There's 2 big ones there which are easy to see. There's a third one which is less easy to see over towards the Portsmouth side, especially if it's a misty day, but it's rather similar to the 2 there. And there's a 4th one round the corner off of St Helens, which you can't see from here anyway. They are collectively known as part of a much larger system of military fortifications known as Palmerston's Follies, which Lord Palmerston built as Prime Minister in the 1860s, when it was his concern that Louis Napoleon, the 3rd Emperor of France, was going to invade England. So the British government got the wind up in a serious way and built loads and loads of fortifications, of which these were part to protect Portsmouth from invasion. The irony is, well, there's a couple of ironies. One, they were begun in the early 1860s, but they were technically so difficult to do and so incredibly expensive they weren't completed until nearly 1880. They took 15, 20 years to build, by which time there was no chance at all of Louis Napoleon, hello, come in, ever invading Britain if he'd ever intended to, which he probably never did. He had in the meantime gone off and invaded Mexico, which was a bad idea from his point of view, then went off to invade Prussia, which was an even worse idea from his point of view because he lost both his throne and had to flee in exile back to Britain, but that's another story. So by the time they were completed, the necessity for them had completely gone, and in any case, military technology had moved on to the point where they were completely obsolete anyway. So they're a huge white elephant, a huge waste of money to the mid-Victorian government. The tidal movement probably would have been similar, but the beach now that you see is much higher than it would have been even 50 or 100 years ago. Why clockwise and not anti-clockwise?
Is it because they had swords? Is it because they had swords on their side? Was it that? And that was your sword?
Really?
Right, yeah.
Oh, that's interesting.
If traditionally, if you're defending from the top and your enemy is coming up the tower to try and get you, bear in mind most people are right-handed, if you're at the top it's much easier to stab downwards, clockwise, rather than to stab upwards, clockwise.
So even though it's a folly, it would traditionally...
It just follows the traditional pattern.
So the traditional pattern...
They'd always be... So all castles, old military buildings will always have the staircases, spiral staircases clockwise rather than anti-clockwise.
That's a great fact, isn't